October 2nd, 1954, 10:15 p.m. A 19-year-old truck driver walked onto the most important stage in country music. He wore a pink shirt and black pants. His hair was slicked back with rose oil. In his hands, he carried a guitar and the biggest dream of his life. 3 minutes and 42 seconds later, that dream was dead. The man who ran the Grand Ole Opry pulled him aside backstage and said 5 words that would become legend. "You ain't going nowhere, son." But here's what nobody saw coming. That rejection didn't end Elvis Presley's career. It started a revolution that would destroy the very institution that rejected him. And 14 days later, on a different stage in a different city, Elvis would prove that sometimes the people who tell you to quit are the ones who don't understand what you're about to become. This is the story of the night country music made its biggest mistake. To understand what happened at the Grand Ole Opry on October 2nd, 1954, you need to understand what the Opry was. It wasn't just a radio show. It was the Vatican of country music, the throne, the ultimate validation. Since 1925, the Opry had broadcast from Nashville every Saturday night. By 1954, it was heard on 50,000-watt WSM radio across the entire South and parts of the Midwest. If you played the Opry, you were somebody. If you became a regular on the Opry, you were country music royalty. The Ryman Auditorium, where the Opry performed, was called the Mother Church of Country Music. Wooden pews instead of seats, a balcony that creaked, acoustics that made every note sacred. Legends walked that stage. Roy Acuff, Ernest Tubb, Hank Williams before he got fired for drinking. The Opry had rules, unwritten but absolute. You wore cowboy hats or suits. You played acoustic instruments. Drums were forbidden. Electric guitars were barely tolerated. Your music had to be traditional, pure, country. In 1954, Jim Denny ran the Opry's talent office. He'd been with WSM since the 1940s and had become one of the most powerful men in country music. When Jim Denny said yes, doors opened. When he said no, careers ended. And Jim Denny did not like change. Summer 1954, Memphis, Tennessee. Elvis Aaron Presley was 19 years old and driving a truck for Crown Electric Company. He'd graduated from Humes High School the year before, lived with his parents in public housing, made $41 a week hauling electrical supplies around Memphis. But at night, Elvis had a secret life. In July 1954, he'd walked into Sun Records studio and recorded a song called "That's All Right." It was a blues number originally performed by Arthur Crudup, a black artist. But Elvis sang it different, faster, with a hiccup in his voice and a rhythm that felt dangerous. The B-side was "Blue Moon of Kentucky," a bluegrass standard written and recorded by Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass music. Elvis took Monroe's stately waltz and turned it into something nobody had heard before. He sped it up, added rhythm, made it move. Sam Phillips, who owned Sun Records, knew he had something. He just didn't know what to do with it. The record started getting airplay on Memphis radio. Not a lot, but enough that people noticed. Kids called in asking who this Elvis Presley was. Some listeners assumed he was black because of how he sang. Phillips needed exposure, national exposure, and there was only one stage that mattered: the Grand Ole Opry. Phillips called Jim Denny. Sold the idea, a young kid from Memphis with a new sound. Denny was skeptical, but agreed to give Elvis one song, one slot, one chance. September 30th, 1954, 2 days before the Opry. Elvis, guitarist Scotty Moore, and bassist Bill Black piled into Scotty's 1954 Chevrolet and drove from Memphis to Nashville. 5 hours through Tennessee back roads. Elvis barely slept the night before. This was everything he'd dreamed about. Elvis had grown up listening to the Opry on Saturday nights. His family couldn't afford much, but they had a radio. Elvis would sit in that tiny Tupelo, Mississippi house, then later in Memphis, listening to Roy Acuff and Ernest Tubb. The Opry was where real singers belonged. They arrived in Nashville on Friday, checked into a cheap motel. Elvis spent Saturday morning pressing his clothes, combing his hair, checking his guitar tuning over and over. October 2nd, 1954, 8 p.m. The Ryman Auditorium was packed. 3,200 people in wooden pews, fanning themselves in the October heat. The Opry broadcast ran from 8 p.m. to midnight, 4 hours of country music's finest. Elvis was scheduled for the 10:15 segment hosted by Hank Snow, one of the Opry's biggest stars. But nobody told Hank Snow who Elvis was. Backstage, Elvis was nervous, not just nervous, terrified. His hands were shaking. Scotty Moore noticed Elvis kept wiping his palms on his pants. Bill Black tried to joke around, lighten the mood, but Elvis wasn't laughing. The Opry was different than the honky-tonks and small venues where they'd been playing. This audience was older, more traditional. They came to hear country music the way it was supposed to sound. At 10:14 p.m., Hank Snow finished his previous number and walked to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a young man here tonight who's been making some noise down in Memphis. Let's welcome, this young man from Memphis." Hank Snow forgot Elvis's name, didn't even say it. Just, "young man from Memphis." Not a great start. Elvis, Scotty, and Bill walked onto the stage. The lights hit Elvis's pink shirt. Some people in the audience whispered, "Pink? On the Opry stage?" Elvis stepped to the microphone. His voice cracked slightly. "Thank you. We're going to do a song called Blue Moon of Kentucky." And then they played. Here's where it gets complicated. What exactly happened during that performance depends on who you ask. Some accounts say Elvis performed the song straight, toned down, trying to please the Opry crowd by playing it more traditional than his Sun Records version. Other accounts say Elvis couldn't help himself. The music took over. His legs started shaking. His body started moving. He sang it the way he felt it, not the way the Opry expected it. What everyone agrees on, the audience response was polite, tepid, lukewarm at best, not silence. The Opry audience was too respectful for that. They clapped, but it was the kind of clapping you give a church soloist who tried their best, encouraging, sympathetic, not enthusiastic. 3 minutes and 42 seconds. That's how long Elvis Presley's Grand Ole Opry career lasted. When the song ended, Elvis said, "Thank you," into the microphone and walked off stage. Scotty Moore and Bill Black followed. The next act was already being introduced. Backstage, Elvis knew. You can feel the difference between polite applause and genuine excitement. He'd felt genuine excitement at the honky-tonks in Memphis, at the small venues in Mississippi. This wasn't that. That's when Jim Denny found him. Accounts vary about exactly what Denny said. Some claim he was harsh. Others say he was more diplomatic. But the core message was the same. According to legend, Denny told Elvis, "You ain't going nowhere, son. You better go back to driving a truck." Denny later denied being that blunt. He told Sam Phillips that Elvis was not bad but didn't fit the Opry style. But Elvis heard what he heard, and what he heard was rejection. In her 2007 biography of Elvis, author Bobby Ann Mason wrote that Elvis cried on the drive back to Memphis. 19 years old, crying in the passenger seat while Scotty Moore drove through the dark Tennessee night. They stopped at a gas station somewhere between Nashville and Memphis. Elvis was so upset, so distracted, that he left his suitcase there, just walked away from it, had to drive back the next day to retrieve it. Sam Phillips tried to comfort him. "Don't listen to them. They don't understand what you're doing." But Elvis was devastated. The Opry was supposed to validate him. Instead, it had rejected him. The most important stage in country music had told him he didn't belong. For a week, Elvis seriously considered quitting, going back to Crown Electric full-time, forgetting about music. Maybe Jim Denny was right. Maybe he wasn't going anywhere. Then Sam Phillips made a phone call. October 9th, 1954. 1 week after the Opry disaster. Phillips called Horace Logan, the producer of a radio show called the Louisiana Hayride. It broadcast from Shreveport, Louisiana, every Saturday night, same time as the Opry. The Louisiana Hayride was different. Started in 1948, it had quickly become known as the Cradle of the Stars because it gave chances to artists the Opry wouldn't touch. Hank Williams got his first big break on the Hayride in 1948. When the Opry fired Hank for drinking in 1952, the Hayride welcomed him back. The Hayride had a reputation. They took risks. They embraced new sounds. When the Opry banned electric guitars, the Hayride plugged them in louder. Horace Logan listened to Elvis's Sun Records single. His first response was honest. This doesn't fit country music patterns. But Logan saw something the Opry didn't: potential, innovation, the future. Let's give him a shot, Logan told his staff. October 16, 1954, 14 days after the Opry Rejection. Elvis, Scotty, and Bill drove through the night from Memphis to Shreveport. They'd played a gig at the Eagle's Nest in Memphis Friday night, then piled into the car at midnight for the 8-hour drive. They arrived in Shreveport Saturday morning, checked into the Captain Shreve Hotel, and Elvis spent 2 hours combing his hair. The municipal auditorium where the Hayride broadcast held 3,800 people. Tickets were 60 cents for adults, 30 cents for kids. The crowd was younger than the Opry, more working class, more open to something new. At 9:30 p.m., radio announcer Frank Page introduced Elvis to the Louisiana Hayride audience. Just a few weeks ago, a young man from Memphis, Tennessee recorded a song on the Sun label, and in just a matter of weeks, that record has skyrocketed right up the charts. He's only 19 years old. He has a new, distinctive style. Elvis Presley. Let's give him a nice hand. Elvis stepped to the microphone. Well, I'd just like to say how happy we are to be down here. It's a real honor for us to get a chance to appear on the Louisiana Hayride. We're going to do a song for you. Got anything else to say, sir? Frank Page laughed. No, I'm ready. We're going to do a song for you we got out on Sun Records. It goes something like this. And then Elvis sang That's All Right. The first performance was nervous, flat, similar to the Opry. Polite applause. Elvis's stage fright was showing. But here's where the Hayride was different. They invited him back. That same night, Elvis performed a second time, later in the show. And something changed. Maybe it was the younger crowd. Maybe it was the relief of not being rejected immediately. Maybe Elvis just relaxed and let himself be himself. But during that second performance, Elvis moved. His legs started shaking, his body responded to the rhythm, and the audience exploded, screaming, not just applause, actual screaming. Teenage girls standing up, yelling, clapping in rhythm, the kind of response Elvis had gotten at the Memphis honky-tonks, but never at the Opry. Horace Logan watched from backstage. He turned to his assistant, Norm Bale. That's it. That's what we've been looking for. November 6th, 1954. Elvis returned to Shreveport with his parents. He was 19, still legally a minor in Louisiana, so Gladys and Vernon Presley had to sign his contract. The Louisiana Hayride offered Elvis a 1-year deal, $18 per performance, every Saturday night. Scotty Moore and Bill Black would get $12 each. Elvis signed without hesitation. For the next year, Elvis appeared on the Louisiana Hayride almost every Saturday night. The show became his home base, his launch pad, the place where he learned how to command a stage, how to work a crowd, how to be Elvis Presley. The contrast couldn't be sharper. The Grand Ole Opry, country music's most prestigious stage, rejected Elvis after one song. The Louisiana Hayride, the scrappy underdog show, made him a star. And here's the beautiful irony. Elvis went on to have 55 hits on the Billboard country charts. 55. More than most Opry regulars. His last single released in his lifetime, Way Down, backed with Pledging My Love, hit #1 on the country charts. In 1977, 23 years after Jim Denny told him to go back to driving trucks. But Elvis never returned to the Grand Ole Opry, not once, even when he became the biggest star in the world, even when the Opry begged him to come back, even when they offered him membership, Elvis said no. The rejection hurt too deep. The memory of that October night, walking off stage to polite applause, Jim Denny's words echoing in his ears, stayed with him forever. In 1998, 44 years after that failed audition, Jim Denny was posthumously inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, the first non-performer to receive that honor. His legacy as a music publisher and talent manager earned him the recognition. But his legacy also includes this. He told the king of rock and roll to quit music. The Grand Ole Opry still broadcasts every Saturday night from Nashville. It's still the most famous country music show in the world. But it's not the only one. And it's not the one that made Elvis Presley. That honor belongs to a radio show in Shreveport, Louisiana, that had the courage to say yes when Nashville said no. October 2nd, 1954, Elvis Presley bombed at the Grand Ole Opry. 14 days later, he became a star at the Louisiana Hayride, and country music learned an expensive lesson. When you tell someone they're not good enough, you better be absolutely sure you're right. Because sometimes the person you reject changes the world, and you become a footnote in their story. Jim Denny thought he was protecting the Opry's standards. What he was actually doing was protecting the Opry from the future, a future that was coming whether they liked it or not, a future that sounded like a 19-year-old truck driver from Memphis singing blues and bluegrass in a pink shirt. The Grand Ole Opry wanted country music to stay exactly as it was, pure, traditional, safe. Elvis Presley wanted to make music that moved, that felt alive, that broke rules. The Opry chose tradition, Elvis chose revolution, and we all know who won.